Okay, sounds good. Don't test me. If I get it wrong sometimes, then I'll remember.
So,
Easy.
can we go to page 168? It's verse 418. Hare Krishna. Am I audible to everyone? Thank you so much for coming today. It's after a busy weekend to come next itself not easy. So we'll discuss today on the topic of humility. Let us begin with some prayers. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanushalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My dear Lord, please guide us also that we can understand and develop the right frame of mind that can help us come closer to you through all the ups and downs of life. Hare Krishna. So, maybe we can go to page 172. We'll come back to 418 later. Page 172 is a well-known verse from the Gita. So, this is, we'll talk on the topic of humility today. And I'll discuss how this same concept of humility can be understood or misunderstood at multiple levels. So we'll talk about today broadly the topic of humility, how it is seen in Tamoguna, in Rajoguna, in Sattva-guna, and in Shuddha Sattva. When one is absorbed in pure love for Krishna. So basically, we'll be discussing 4 conceptions of humility. And broadly speaking, so let's begin. So you can repeat after you. My dear Lord, make me a truth seeker, not a blind follower or a blind rejecter. Many of us know this verse, so let's recite it together. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Seek the truth with a heart sincere, through service, questions, and reverence clear. The wise who see the truth profound shall lead you where real knowledge is found. So, who would like to read? Yes, please. One paragraph. We have.
My dear Lord, life can often be so complicated and confusing that knowing the knowledge about its purpose can seem almost impossible. Let this difficulty not make me discouraged. Let it make me humble enough to seek guidance throughout history. O merciful Lord, you have provided seekers access to seers. Let me be grateful for the seers I have access to.
Yes, thank you. So broadly, this is the verse Srila Prabhupada often quoted about approaching a spiritual master. And in the context of the Gita, this particular chapter, among the 18 chapters of the Gita, this chapter 4 is Srila Prabhupada titled as Transcendental Knowledge. Sometimes it is talked about as Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Sometimes it is called as, it is basically, Jnana is emphasized over here. So in this chapter, 4th chapter, so this particular verse is coming at a transition, where previously Krishna has said that there are various forms of sacrifice one can do, various yajna one can do. And then he says that the purpose of all yajnas is ultimately jnanam parisamapyate. That through whatever sacrifice we do, whether it is we do austerity like yoga, we do fasting, we do puja, whatever we do, it should lead us to wisdom. And Krishna is telling this process is not mechanical. It is not something which just happens. We need guidance for that. And that's where in general, one of the key themes of the Gita is that the divine acts through the human. This is spiritual world, and this is the material world. Then is we who are here, it is Krishna wants to act through us. The whole purpose of the Gita is not just Krishna, God is great and Krishna will do everything. No, God is great, therefore you choose to be on the side of God and you do the will of God. So the Mahabharata war is different from the Ramayana war in many ways. One way is that in the Ramayana war, Lord Ram himself is active. He leads the forces. In the Mahabharata war, Krishna is there but he's on the side. He's not himself fighting. So the purpose of the Gita is not just to establish or proclaim God's position. The Gita's purpose. Is there a space over here? Maybe you can come ahead. There's somebody who is standing behind. You can also come ahead if you like. So the Gita's purpose is not just proclaiming God's position. That it is God is great. Yes, that is one part of it. But the purpose of proclaiming God's position is primarily transforming man's disposition, transforming human disposition. Not just God is great, but because God is great, we learn to do God's will. And thus it is Arjuna who is saying initially, I won't fight. He becomes ready to fight. So one of the key teachings of the Gita is that the divine acts through the human. Krishna acts through human agents. And now this is not just in terms of the actions that we want to do. It's also in terms of, quite often, the guidance we get. So, yes, each one of us has a personal relationship with Krishna. At the same time, Krishna talks about that we can have, not Krishna, in this particular, Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. So, Jnaninas, the word is actually plural, it's not Jnani. So, we can have many guides. And Krishna will guide us through those human guides who are connected with him and who are doing his will. So, the Gita in one sense is a God-centered book, but it is, you could say, also a human-centered book. It's rather how the human being is transformed by understanding and connecting with God. That is the focus of the Gita. So in that connection, this verse has three components. Krishna says that be submissive. Tadviddhi pranipati. No. Be humble, be submissive. Pariprashnena seva. Ask questions. But it's not just be humble. It's also ask questions. So the idea is that when we are going through life, that sometimes we use different metaphors for different points. Sometimes it's a scripture is like a manual for life. Well, I also used to use that metaphor, but nowadays I'm not very comfortable with it. For two reasons. Life is too complicated to have any manual. The manual means you press this button and that will happen, and you pull this lever and that will happen. So scripture is not just a manual. Scripture is more like a guidebook. Definitely scripture contains wisdom, but it gives us broad principles. Manual is more specific. Do this, do this, do this. Well, maybe it is much more like a guidebook for decision making. And the guidebook also implies that we need a guide. And not just a guide, but we need guides. And our relationship with Krishna is developed not just in isolation, in terms of how we come and pray to God. It's also in relationship with others. So see, there are many virtues in life, like say physical strength. See, all virtues exist in some level of a relationship with others. Say somebody has the virtue of strength. This person is very strong. Or somebody has a cleverness. Now generally, any quality we talk about, there is a certain level of comparison involved in it. Strength is very strong in comparison with whom? In comparison, say 95% of people. This person is physically very strong. This person is very smart. In comparison to what? Maybe if you're talking about IQ, it may be okay, this person has IQ of 160. Most people have 130, 140, 150, whatever. So generally, all qualities, there is a interactional element to it. So the interactional or the social element to all qualities is there. The social element is that how does this particular quality in this person stand in reference to others? However, within this frame, we could say these are more, there is a comparative element in these qualities. But if we consider something like humility, this is not just comparative, this is intrinsically a relational quality. Even like you say friendship, kindness, kindness or friendship, these are not seen in isolation. How kind a person is, you cannot quantify it. We see how kind a person is, how polite a person is, in terms of how we interact with each other. There's an American comedian, he said, I love humanity. It is just human beings I can't get along with. So now, loving humanity is cost free. Isn't it? It's just a concept. Anybody can claim I love humanity. So in that sense, humility is not so much comparative, oh I am humbler than you. It is more that when I interact with others, that's when humility is seen. So I started this point that the divine acts through the human. So when the divine acts through the human, how we interact with others is also very important and reflective of our receptivity to divinity, of our Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada was so exalted, he was completely dedicated to Krishna and Krishna's service. Yet when an ordinary postman told him, Swamiji, you are writing magazines, people will throw away the magazines. But you get some books. Write some books that will stay for a longer time. Prabhupada did not say, I am a pure devotee. Who do you think you are telling me? Now Prabhupada said, okay, this point has merit. And Prabhupada is open to learning. So it is that the divine can act through the human. Prabhupada said that I felt as if my spiritual master was speaking to him. So the humility is much more a relational quality. So can you read the next paragraph? So for us, the seers of truth are those who give us guidance. Any of the ladies would like to read? One Mataji. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sure. We'll come to you later. Yeah.
When learning humbly from such great souls, bless me, my Lord, with the service attitude which acknowledges that learning the truth comes not just by seeking but also by serving. For it is the sacrifice of ego, implicit in any act of service for a higher cause. That is the pathway to wisdom. You urge me, my Lord, to complement humility and service attitude with curiosity, by which I can use reason and reflection to internalize what I learn.
Yes. So when we talk about, say, we human beings are here and we want the path to Krishna. So the three components, this is His grace, Krishna's grace. When we want to access, there are these three aspects to it. Humility, inquisitiveness, and service attitude. That is talked about over here. So humility is there and service is pranipatena, pariprashnena, and sevaya. So the way to Krishna's grace is, humility is important, but humility is one of the components. It is not the sole component. Humility does not mean blind acceptance of authority. Oh, I am humble means whatever you say, I'll accept it. Oh. It is also that I need to use my intelligence. Are we expecting more devotees? Maybe I'll move backwards over here. All of you can come ahead. Okay, that's it. Could do one thing. I don't need this. I can hear. You have enough space for this? Okay, sure. Oh, there's a lot of space here. Okay, good. Yeah. You can look elsewhere without anyone noticing. So, okay. So, when we are talking about going ahead in our spiritual journey, now I'll talk about humility both in day-to-day life also, as well as in spiritual life. We'll focus more on spiritual life, but in day-to-day life also, humility is not just how we interact with devotees or with our gurus. It's with everyone. But humility alone, sometimes what happens is when we take a virtue, we may absolutize the virtue. That means this virtue is the only thing that is important. Yes, it is important, but is that the only thing that is important? That has to be questioned. That has to be carefully seen, so that, because sometimes it's a combination of virtues that forms a character of a person. Now, one virtue may be very prominent in the person, and that can be a greater characteristic of that person. But a sound character is a combination of various virtues. So here Krishna is talking about this combination which will help us to move ahead. So we'll focus on humility primarily today. But can you go ahead to the next paragraph? Who would like to read? Give the prabhus. Yes, we'll come to you last time.
Guide me, O Lord, to avoid extremes, the extreme where humility and service attitude lead to blind following and a slavish mentality, as well as the other extreme where curiosity degenerates into a cynicism that delights in finding faults with every answer and falsifying every truth.
So humility on one side is good, but if it goes too far, that humility can lead to blind following, where in the name of humility, absolutely, there is no question to be asked. In fact, whatever this person says is the absolute truth. And yes, it may also be, it may not be, but we also need, God has not given us intelligence so that we reject the intelligence. Yes, we reject the ego that claims that my intelligence should be able to understand everything right now. There may be a process that needs to be followed to understand things. But it is, if humility is taken too far, it leads to blind following that can be toxic. That can lead to a lot of harm. And this happens in every religious tradition and every secular tradition also. Like, this is how personality cults are formed, where some person becomes like a cultish leader. Then whatever that person says, people just accept that person. You know, it's nowadays, especially in America, but in several other parts of the world also, politics has become like the religion of people. And when I'm using the word religion, I'm not using it in the positive sense here. Religion in the sense, like, it's almost like an irrational devotion or dedication. So people become extremely polarized on political grounds. And one particular leader gets elevated to the position of God. And that person, you can see no fault in that person. And the opposite side may also, maybe at that time have some other leader, maybe that time they don't have that leader. But later on some other leader comes and it becomes like a cultish following completely. So absolutely no questioning anyone at all. So that can lead to blind following, which can lead to a lot of danger. I'll talk about this a little later, but let's try to get a conceptual map of where we are going. Now curiosity is inquisitiveness, pariprashnena, wanting to know. This can go towards an extreme where it becomes cynicism. Cynicism is where, every answer that we get, we try to find faults with the answer. And if somebody is analytical enough, intellectual enough, we can try to find holes in everything that we hear. And see, the human intelligence has been given the power to either control the mind, or you could say control and correct the mind, because the mind has certain conceptions and the intelligence can be used to evaluate those conceptions. What I believe right now, is that right? Is that wrong? But the intelligence can also be used for the opposite purpose. The intelligence can be used to either rectify the mind's conceptions or to justify the mind's conceptions. So in that sense, if there is curiosity, it is good. But when it becomes cynicism, okay, I think you are wrong. And even when you are making a rational point, I somehow or the other find something wrong in that. And we just refuse to accept anything. So it's like, one devotee showed me a cartoon. He said that, one person meets another person. I disagree. He says, but the second person, I didn't say anything. He says, whatever you say, I disagree with you. So we are not disagreeing with the person's point. We just want to reject the person itself. So sometimes when that happens, that can happen with people, that can happen with ideas also. With concepts, ideas. So that's another extreme. So we don't want, in the name of questioning, asking questions is very good. But in the name of questioning, we don't want to just be rejecting everything. That's why there is, in every field of knowledge, there is some concept of axioms. That there are some things which we may tentatively accept as true, as functional assumptions. And then see, with this assumption, does this make sense? And does this work? And gradually we evaluate that. So, so in between, now basically what we are talking about, the process to gain knowledge. Ultimately, this chapter is all about, and the Gita is all about gaining knowledge. Arjuna is wanting to gain the knowledge of how to act wisely in the world. So in this, we need both, on one side, humility. Humility means, yeah, what I know is not enough. There's more that I don't know. And curiosity is, I want to know more. So, humility is that I don't know enough. Curiosity is, I want to know more. And the service attitude that comes in between, because this knowledge is meant to be applied in life and it leads us to understanding. So, humility is this combination of you could say it's like a recipe. Humility, curiosity, and we could say service attitude in between. These three will lead us to knowledge. Lead us to, it can be enlightenment, or it can even be a better understanding of a subject, of a particular issue. When two people are having a difference of opinion, then both can be arguing to try to establish how the other person is wrong. Or both can be, okay, let's try to understand, where are you coming from? Why are you speaking like this? What are you thinking about? So in that sense, it is, if we consider, the purpose of the Gita is itself not to develop humility. The purpose of the Gita is to become an instrument of God's will, to learn to live in harmony with divine love. And for that purpose, humility is important. But along with that, other components are also there. So, with this understanding, now let's look at how humility can be understood and misunderstood. So, quite often, we think of humility, as I said, these are relational virtues. So, we often think of humility in terms of its opposite. So, what is the opposite of humility? Pride. What are the other words for pride? Ego. Pride, ego, arrogance. Krishna uses 3 words, dambho, darpo, abhimanascha. So Krishna in 16.4, when describing the characteristics of the demoniac, it talks about these three. These are 3 variants of the ego. So dambha is more of wanting to show the qualities that we, amanitum adambhitvam, sorry. Darpa is wanting to exhibit the qualities that we have. Dambha is pretending to have qualities that we don't have. Like somebody is invited to a wedding in a very upper class kind of social circle. Now, they don't have the kind of clothes they can wear for that purpose. So they buy some clothes from Amazon and wear them and then return them. So you pretend to be wealthier than you are. So dambha, darpa and abhiman. So one is that I want to exhibit the qualities that I have. The other is I want to make a show of qualities that I don't even have. And abhiman is I insist on honor for the qualities that I have. It's not just that I am wealthy. Everybody should respect me for how wealthy I am. Not just that I have a PhD. Everybody should know that I am a PhD and I should be, they should be in awe of me for my PhD. So, when knowledge can become a source of pride, so we say PhD can lead to perpetual humility deficiency. Now, of course, it doesn't have to do that. But the idea is that there are many variants of the ego. And they can express themselves in different ways. But the key point is this is more like a bilateral understanding. Bilateral means there are 2 components over here. A more holistic understanding is true, but a more holistic understanding would be a trilateral understanding. Trilateral means there are 3 components over here. One side is ego. The other side is insecurity. And in between is humility. So, ego means that I think I am better than, greater than what I actually am. Insecurity is that I am worse than, lesser than, lower than what I am. So, we could say we are talking here about our vision of ourselves. How do we look at ourselves? When we are looking at ourselves with ego, we think that we know and we can do far more things than what we can do. So in a sense, ego is associated with overconfidence or arrogance. I know everything, I can do everything. So essentially, God. So this is, when there is too much ego, it leads to Mayavad. Now the opposite of ego is, in this context, one is I know everything, I can do everything. The other side is, I know nothing and I can do nothing. And that leads to low self-esteem, that leads to insecurity. That's at psychological level. And at philosophical level, this goes down to Shunyavad. So, I am everything, I can do everything, or I am nothing and I can do nothing. In between is humility. I am something and I can do some things. Mamai vamsho jiva loke. We are an amsha of Krishna. We are a part of Krishna. So, because I'm a part, I can do some things. So, if we focus on humility, I can do everything. Many people may start with, we all start in life with a certain level of ego. We think, I'm going to conquer the world. Somebody says, I'm going to become the next president of America. I'm going to become the next ruler of the world. You think of that when you're 12, 15, 20. By the time you're 25, if I just get a job, it'll be good. Life often beats us down. So we may start from ego, we can go towards insecurities, I can do nothing. And in between is, I can do some things. So I am something and I can do something. So now, with this understanding, that when we are moving towards developing a healthy vision of ourselves, the vision of ourselves where I think I can do everything, it is centered on overconfidence, arrogance, that can have many negative consequences. One of them is that we may do things which we are not really good at. We may have conceptions which we never correct. And no, we don't let anyone correct our conceptions also. Then that will lead to consequences. We may hurt others and we may hurt ourselves. The consequences of insecurity are also damaging. We are constantly doubting ourselves. We are constantly sabotaging ourselves. We are constantly undercutting ourselves. Maybe, I won't be able to do this. I can't do this. I can't do that. And now, as a pendulum, there are times when the pendulum will move in either direction. That there are some times when we are able to achieve something, when we have gained certain level of expertise in some field, the pendulum may move towards ego. When we are starting on a completely new field in life, and we may have some insecurity. Will I be able to do this? So if you come from India to America, there's so many challenges. You're coming to a new place. Will I succeed? Will I be able to do it? A certain level of insecurity is there. If a couple get married and have a child, and parenting is a huge responsibility. And will I be a good parent? There's some insecurity will be there. So we may go in either of the directions. But overall, humility is a healthy state to be at a steady level. So ego, if you consider, my main focus of the talk will be in terms of understanding the three modes. So insecurity is a result of too much tamoguna. When our vision is contaminated by tamas, we look at ourselves in terms of all our inadequacies, all the things I cannot do. Now, ego is a result of rajas, where we think I can control this, I can control that, I can control that, I'll control everything in life, eventually. Now, humility is more a result of sattva. So, sattvat sanjayate jnanam, Krishna says. Sattva brings clarity for us. And clarity is that, okay, I am a part of some bigger reality and I can play a part in that bigger reality. So there is, my existence has some value. Let me explore what value it is and how can I move forward. So let's explore this part till now. About. So the three modes are a concept which is widely talked about. And the modes can be understood in many different ways. Just for our purpose, I'll talk about modes in terms of two concepts. They're like filters or they are like gears. Filters means, or how powerful is this person? Now those are important things to look at. Or how powerful is this person? Now those are important things to look at. But that's not, the person should not be reduced to that. So in Rajoguna, it's a particular kind of filter. In Tamoguna, maybe the filter is, oh, is this person stronger than me? Is this person bigger than me? Is this person here to harass me? You know, that's one way of looking at it. So these are like filters. They shape the filters that function associated with our Jnanendriyas. Jnanendriyas are our knowledge acquiring senses. So our eyes, ears. Now gears this is associated more with the Karmendriyas. That when we act in life, the modes don't just affect our perception, they also affect our action. See, some people think and talk. Some people talk to think. And some people talk and think only when others think too much. And think only when others think too much. I speak something and there's unexpected impact of that. What happened? If something is wrong. Say if somebody, the humor is a good thing, but sometimes humor can very easily go wrong. And there can be always inappropriate kind of humor. Where somebody without thinking makes some joke and that joke turns out to be offensive. And you don't think about it. And then instead of laughing, everybody starts frowning and glaring. I think, did I do something wrong over here? So if there is always a situational element to humor. Sometimes we don't think before what we do. And we don't even sometimes immediately think. Only when the impact comes out, then we start thinking, okay, what happened over here? So like some people make things happen. Some people watch things happen. And some people wonder what happened. So that is broadly Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So these modes act like the filters for our Jnanendriyas and they act as gears for our Karmendriyas. So when we are in a particular mode, we tend to see certain things and we tend to act in certain ways. So with this, now when a person is in Tamoguna, so humility, humility when it is combined with tamas, that means a person is trying to cultivate humility, but their overall consciousness is tamas. Like I said, that a person's character is determined not just by one quality. One quality is important, but what is the set of qualities, set of virtues or qualities that they have. So if in humility is seen in tamas, the person is broadly in tamas, they mistake humility to be insecurity. Always doubting oneself, always questioning oneself, always undermining oneself. That is insecurity. And that is not what humility is meant to be. Humility is actually meant, yes, that there is more that I need to know, but it is not to devalue ourselves and to devalue what we know. Insecurity means this goes, as I said, I am nothing. So humility, if you want to understand it, this will be more, I'll talk about this when I come to curiosity. But what is the purpose of all virtues? Ultimately, we exist for a purpose. We are parts of God. We are meant to play a part in God's plan. So humility, it should not, what it should do is, it is not about devaluing ourselves. It is not about devaluing ourselves. It is about valuing something bigger than ourselves. Valuing something bigger than ourselves. That is, that I may have some abilities, I may have some inabilities, I may have some disabilities. So, inabilities is what I don't have, disabilities is what I may never be able to have. Whatever it is, I may have all these things. And I need to be aware of that. But valuing something bigger than ourselves. None of us is perfect. But we all have a role to play. If we are a parent, now we may have some doubts whether the way I am training or disciplining my child is right or wrong. And we all sometimes may go too much in the signs of leniency or go too much in the signs of strictness. But more than worrying about myself, oh, maybe I'm a terrible parent, it's what is important is taking care of my child and understanding and being there for my child. So valuing something bigger than ourselves. Sometimes this is put as humility is not thinking low of yourself, it's thinking less of yourself. Less of yourself means, yeah, my thoughts are not meant to be obsessed with myself so much. Yes, I have certain limitations and say, I need to be aware of my limitations. So that's why generally parenting is a two-parent job. Now one parent may be a little more strict, the other may be a little more lenient. Whatever is our particular nature, a balance may be required for that. So in one sense, it is not about devaluing ourselves. See, what happens is, if you consider humility and insecurity and ego. Ego and insecurity are two sides of the same coin. The coin is the coin of self-obsession. I am obsessed with myself. I am so great. Why don't people understand how great I am? Isn't it? That's ego. And insecurity is, I'm worthless. I can never do anything. But in both cases, the I is the center. And humility is meant to get us out of that I of the center. So humility is not about devaluing ourselves. Yes, sometimes we may be overvaluing ourselves and a certain level of, I'm not as good as I think I am. That may be required. But the essence of humility is not devaluing ourselves. Ultimately, Arjuna was serving Krishna. He was fighting a war for Krishna. You cannot fight a war if you are plagued by self-doubt. When Prabhupada came to America, he was extremely humble. Prabhupada says, Krishna, I know nothing. He says, Dina Ami. He says, I am a fallen person. Shakti nahi buddhi na. I have no strength, I have no intelligence. But then Prabhupada's mood was, Krishna, make me your instrument. Nachao, prabhu, nachao semati. So valuing something bigger than ourselves. But so when humility becomes self-centered, then it leads to insecurity. Oh, I lack this, I lack that, I lack that. So now, unfortunately, if we see humility and ego only in bilateral terms, then we may end up fueling our insecurity in the name of humility. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna rises in confidence, raising his bow, ready to fight for Krishna. And that is what each one of us is meant to be able to do with the knowledge of the Gita, which of course talks about humility. So this is humility and tamoguna, which will lead to insecurity. Now, humility, I think hum is a different word. I'll just not make sure. Humility plus rajas. In Rajoguna, if somebody has humility also, in that case, humility is simply a strategy. A strategy for what over here? That, say in my, when I was introduced to Bhakti about 30 years ago, and we naturally learn about humility and cultivate humility. And if somebody has a lot of humility, or if we think somebody has a lot of humility, we naturally appreciate that person, we try to respect that person, and we try to learn from that person. And I had noticed this before in my pre-Bhakti days also, but later also I noticed it. Like some people, they seem to be extremely humble in front of their seniors. But to the degree they are humble in front of their seniors, they often become harsh in front of their juniors. And now, of course, we have if our juniors are there, we are in a position of responsibility, we have to discipline them. And that's required. But sometimes you feel this is excessive. So for some people who are Rajoguna, for them everything is a power calculus. And humility for them becomes just a show by which they can get respect and power in social circles where humility is valued. So for example, somebody may act humble in front of their superiors And that show of humility is a tool so that just see how humble I am in front of my seniors. You should be humble like that in front of me. So humility becomes a strategy to gain power in a power structure. And that's why humility is seen not just in how we deal with our seniors. It's also with our equals, also with our juniors. Now, of course, humility will be expressed differently. It is not that parents are meant to listen, parents in the name of humility listen to everything that a child says. That would not be humility, that would be stupidity. Isn't it? If a child says, I want to eat 100 chocolates today. Oh, I'll be humble, No. It doesn't work like that. Its expression may be different according to context. But sometimes in Rajoguna, because everything is about power and possession and control and enjoyment, there are people who may put on a mask of humility, but their purpose is not so much to actually cultivate deep humility. It is to gain authority by pretending to have that humility. Now, we can't really go into anyone's heart and know this person is pretending. So I'm not encouraging judgmentality over here. I'm talking more about how humility can be misunderstood. So it can be misunderstood, it can be misapplied. So in Rajoguna, when somebody, their primary consciousness is about gaining power, gaining control, gaining material pleasure, then everything else gets shaped accordingly. So our consciousness can reshape our vision of God also. I was in Varanasi, I had gone for a program, and I was just traveling, and I saw a small Hanuman temple. In India you may see roadside Hanuman temples. So in that Hanuman temple, above that there was a prayer. It was actually like painted. And I was taken aback. The prayer was, Tum to ho bal brahmachari, mujhe de do ek nari. You are a celibate, please give me one woman. No, I don't know whether it was somebody had put it as a joke or whatever, but it is so brazen that we don't see God as a source of purification, a source of wisdom, as a source of shelter. We instrumentalize God. God is an instrument to fulfill my desires. So often in this vision, God becomes like a cosmic vending machine. I put in prayer and God gives me my desires. It becomes like that. So now the point I'm making here is that when our consciousness is in a particular way, then everything gets shaped accordingly. So if our consciousness is prime in Rajoguna, then humility becomes primarily a strategy. It becomes a show. So in front of the people who matter, we may act humble. But in front of others, then it's almost like the person becomes a different person. In Western tradition, there's this, I think R.L. Stevenson wrote this book called Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Or you have two just opposite personalities. So like that, the person seems to change completely. So that is a Rajasic vision of humility, where it's a strategy for what? To gain power, to gain respect, and through respect, and we get power. That means, say, if there is a hierarchy where there's someone above me, and I respect whoever is above me, so here I respect those who are above me, so that I can demand respect from those below me. So show respect and demand respect. So internally, I may think that I am so great. Now Srila Prabhupada sometimes would talk about this in a more light-hearted, but a serious point he would make that. Sometimes it's like the Mayavadi philosophy. It is like, I no longer need my guru now. Now that I have become liberated, so I don't need my guru anymore. So get out of my way now. So the idea is, the authority is required, the person above me is required till I get to the top. And once I get to the top, then there's no need to show any humility to anyone because I am at the top now. And this so this vision of humility will not lead one to much spiritual growth. Krishna talks about two kinds of people in the Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter. He says there are some people who are wise and there are some people who are otherwise. So there are Daivi and Asuri Samruti. Isn't it? There are the divine nature and the demoniac nature. Now in the description of the demoniac nature in 16.15, Krishna talks that sometimes those of a demoniac nature may also make a show of certain things. So he says that they may yakshe dasyam imodishya ityajnana vimohitaha. He says that they may do yajnas, they may give charity. But by what are they doing it for? They Ishvaro aham bhogi siddho aham balwan sukhi adhyo bijanvan asmi konyosti sadrusho maya. Just want to establish who is there as good as me. Who is there? I am so wealthy, I am so powerful, I am surrounded by so many aristocratic friends. And I do all these good things also. So that is it's a facade. So sometimes demoniac people may put on a facade of piety. They may put on a facade of religion or devotion. They put on a facade of humility also. One of our temples in Mumbai is in Juhu, which is the area where Bollywood is there. Now sometimes many Bollywood stars also come to the temple. Now some of may have the new devotion, they come to the temple for darshan. Many times after they come to the temple, they usually post on social media, oh I went to this temple, and people say, oh you're such a nice person, you go to temple also. So now when we are going to a temple, are we going to take darshan or give darshan? Now we are not judging any particular person over here. My point is that it is possible that we can do a good thing not for a good purpose but for an ulterior purpose. For most people it is not that the ulterior purpose is the only purpose. It's a mix, generally speaking. So but sometimes the ulterior purposes can become very high. So that is Rajoguna. Now before I move to Sattvaguna, it's important that this combination of humility in two people, one in Rajas and one in Tamas. This is a toxic combination. Say suppose there is a person in Rajas who is in authority position, any kind of authority position, and there is subordinate. So for the person in authority, humility is a strategy, and for the subordinate, if the subordinate is tamas, humility becomes a cause of insecurity. And this is a deadly combination. Just at individual level, if we have insecurity, that's a problem. But if our insecurity is weaponized against us by someone, that means somebody who makes a person feel more and more insecure and unworthy. And then once a person feels very insecure and unworthy, then they can be very easily manipulated. This is how fanaticism happens. This is how cults grow. Many religious extremists also. If you see, there are many various theories about how religious extremism comes about, and all of them have particular elements of truth to it. Now, one is the socio-economic factor, the cultural factors. Socio-economic factors is that people are poor and they have been subjected to injustice and exploitation, and finally they explode, and that's how insurgency happens. There is some truth to that. Most of the active terrorists, they come from Pakistan and Afghanistan. Those are relatively in the Middle East. Those are the poorer countries. They don't have the wealth of oil. There are other things that Afghanistan has. Drugs are manufactured through there, other things. But my point is that there's some truth to it. But if you look at many of the leaders of terrorists, they are well-educated people. Bin Laden was educated. Who was the other person? ISIS. His leader. There was also a doctor supposedly. So they are well-educated people. So it's not that just socio-economic factors are enough to explain. Now, is religious indoctrination a factor? Of course, that's a factor. But is that the only factor? If that were the only factor, then everybody from that religion would be extremist. isn't it? So it's a toxic blend of various factors. So sometimes some people may be educated and they may weaponize their followers to fight for some selfish causes. So people who are educated, they're not ignorant, but they may be very cynical. So, so the point is that this combination of insecurity on one side and strategy on the other side, that is a toxic strategy. That is a toxic blend. So, like for example, Hamas, the leaders are in Qatar and other places living in comfort, and all the people there are starving. I'm not talking about taking sides in that particular geopolitical war right now. I'm just giving an example. This example can be anywhere, any parts in in America. There are these mega churches, and sometimes there are. I mean, in the Christian tradition, there's this concept of every religion has a concept of giving charity, tithing. So there are these mega churches, and there are pastors of those churches. Sometimes these pastors have their own private jets. And not just a private jet, there was one pastor, he has 12 private jets. And there are poor people or not very wealthy people, they struggle and scrape and save money. And then they give that in charity. And there are people, when they give, the pastors, when they give talks, they may appear very devoted and very, very pure-hearted. But you look at their life is like a rock star's life, isn't it? So again, this is not a criticism of Christianity. I'm not talking about all mega churches and their pastors are like that. I'm just giving this as an example, this combination. In the Abrahamic religions, guilt is a very central factor. That the idea is that we are all products of the original sin. And sin is like Adam and Eve sinned against God. And sin came as a genetic defect. Almost like a genetic defect in everyone. And everybody is sinful. And we need the saving grace of Jesus. And the saving grace of Jesus comes through one's dedication, submission to the church. So this idea that there can be humility can be a strategy where I pretend, it's not just humility, I pretend to be devoted in front of God, sing and speak the glories of God. But after that, when misuses that power, and people who have insecurity, they just put aside their intelligence. Yeah, our intelligence may not be able to understand everything. But that doesn't mean our intelligence can understand nothing. And things which are clearly objectionable, should they not be questioned? In the Hindu tradition also, in the Vaishnava tradition, I think a year or two ago, there's a movie that had come out called Maharaja. So that movie was about how in the Vaishnava tradition itself, there are some priests. See, there is, in the Vedic tradition, there is this concept. Okay, this is gone off. Hare Krishna. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, good. So see, in the Vedic tradition, there is the divine connects with the human in many ways. So one of them is the avatar. So avatar is where the divine descends to the human. Human level. In the human arena, the divine appears. And what happens is, we see the Leela of the avatar. Now there is another concept called Avesh. Now Avesh is more like a temporary presence. So Avesh is where something divine or some higher divinity manifests through a particular person for a particular amount of time. So it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that there is an associate of Mahaprabhu called Nakula Brahmachari. And when he would speak, people would feel as if Mahaprabhu is speaking through them. That person. So there is this concept of Avesh also, that the divine can act through the human. And like we have Shakti Avesh Avatar, Srila Prabhupada is sometimes called it, that some potency of the divine may manifest through the human. So now, this can be weaponized. So what had happened it's not very widespread phenomena, but it's still a horrible phenomena. See, there is the idea that if we are performing, if we are describing some pastime of Krishna, or if we are doing a Leela of, depicting a drama, doing a Leela of Krishna. So, it is said that that particular character we are depicting, if our mood is very prayerful, then that character or amsha of that character manifests in us. And that's it, Avesh. So in Varanasi and other places there is Ram Leela. And in that Ram Leela, what happens is that if a child is playing the role of Ram, then before they start the drama itself, they do Aarti of the child. And on that day, the father will come and bow down to the child. Like, today you're not my child, today Ram is manifesting through it. And that's a prayerful mood of to immerse oneself in that Leela. And that's important, to get absorption in it. But sometimes this idea of Avesh has been weaponized. So for example, some cynical people, some power-hungry people who take on a garb of spiritual teachers. And they may claim that, actually Krishna's Ras Leela is going on. And they may tell, actually Krishna is entering into me. And they may tell some naive, gullible women, actually I see Radha's Avesh has entered into you. And together we'll perform Ras Leela. And if you don't agree, then you are interrupting in the Lord's enjoyment. This is the highest perversity in the name of religion. So this is horrible. Now, the Lord can enter into us, but when Lord enters into us, the Lord does not encourage us to do outright immoral things. So Prabhupada will say, this is not Ras Leela, this is Rascal Leela. So the point of that somebody using humility as a strategy, if they come with somebody for whom humility means insecurity, it can be a toxic combination which can lead to a lot of problems for the individual and even for the collective at large. So moving forward now, humility in sattva. What does it lead to? To curiosity, to eagerness to learn. So humility in sattva means that it is largely non-different from curiosity. There is what I know and there is what I don't know. What I know and what I don't know. So, curiosity focuses on what I don't know, but it does not devalue what I know. We value what we know, but we value more what we don't know. We want to learn more. And this is a healthy understanding of curiosity. I want to learn more. There are people who are wiser than me. There are people who are more expert than me. Let me learn from them. So humility as curiosity is very, very helpful in our spiritual growth. But that curiosity is not based on, again, trivializing what we know. Sanatana Goswami, for example, with Mahaprabhu, he says that Murkhami, he says, I'm a fool, I don't know anything, I don't know why this tapatra, these miseries are coming to me in material existence. Now he says that in the mood of approaching Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. However, if we look at the subsequent discussion that happens, when Mahaprabhu gives some answers, he asks pertinent questions. He is saying that, okay, my knowledge is not enough for me to understand exactly why we are in the predicament in this material world and how do we get out of it. But he is not dismissing the knowledge that he has. In fact, when he writes his books, he combines what Mahaprabhu has taught him with what he has learned in the past, and that's how he writes his books. The whole concept of rasa is what Mahaprabhu actually systematically teaches, and then he combines the Natya tradition and the Bhakti tradition, and that's how the books like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and others come up. So that's an intricate subject. But my point is that when we learn, it is not simply by devalue and rejecting what we know previously. Yes, when we learn something new, some of the things that we knew in the past, we have to reject them because they may be wrong. But it's not that everything has to be rejected. There is much that we build on. Okay, I know particular things. So right now we are trying to discuss and learn some things. So all of you have some basic knowledge of English. Now, that knowledge you have, and that's how on that you are able to build further understanding. So the knowledge of English that we have is not to be rejected. Now we may have particular conceptions which we may want to re-examine. Okay, I thought this was like this, but maybe it is not like this. So that's fair enough, but it's not devaluing or trivializing what we know. The point of spirituality is not that we outsource our intelligence to someone else. You make all decisions for me. No, it is that we see that my intelligence is there, but it's finite. So we require other resources for our intelligence, to supplement our intelligence, to strengthen our intelligence. And we are open to those resources. Ultimately, whether it is my intelligence or others' intelligence, it's all coming from Krishna. Krishna is the source of all intelligence. But for that, we need some resources. So humility, in this case, it is not about outsourcing our intelligence to someone else. Like sometimes here in America, people may outsource jobs. How many of you have heard the word Bangalore? No, obviously you have heard the word Bangalore, but I'm not talking about the proper noun Bangalore. Bangalore is a verb. I have been Bangalored. That means what? That I have been fired because my job has been outsourced to Bangalore. So sometimes there is outsourcing that happens, but it is not outsourcing. So it's resource for our intelligence. Ultimately, it is our intelligence that needs to be built. See, Krishna, even when Krishna is there with Arjuna, Krishna does not use his godhood to impose his will on Arjuna. You see, it's very helpful to look at the Gita in the light of what happens. Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, but it is not after surrendering when Arjuna is fighting. Before each arrow that he shoots, Krishna, do I have your permission to shoot this arrow? What about this arrow? What about this arrow? No, Arjuna is his own person. And he is using his intelligence, complemented with what he has learned from Krishna, to fight. And there are times when Krishna intervenes. But Krishna is not making Arjuna practically or intellectually dependent on him. We are spiritually dependent. But it's not that for every decision, Arjuna has to consult Krishna. No, Arjuna is a warrior. He has fought many wars. So Krishna does not create insecurity in Arjuna. You have to be a part of my plan and you should always be worried. What if I do this? This may be wrong, this may be wrong, this may be wrong. No, use your best intelligence and move forward in life. If Krishna had wanted to use his godhood to impose his will on Krishna, no, Krishna could have finished the Gita in 6 words. I am God. Obey me. Fight. Bhagavad Gita Sampurnam. Krishna does not do that. Why? Because Krishna goes through a whole process of ethical reasoning guided by philosophical deliberation to equip Arjuna's intelligence. And that is how the Bhagavatam, the first few incidents that are there in the Bhagavatam. See, when Ashwatthama is to be punished, Krishna is there with Arjuna, but Krishna does not tell Arjuna what to do. Arjuna does, and Krishna is pleased by that. And then later on, when Krishna departs from the world, at that time Arjuna is devastated. But then he remembers the Gita's words and he becomes calm. So humility is not meant to that we outsource our intelligence, we become chronically dependent on someone else. Yes, we seek wisdom from others, but that is ultimately, Srila Prabhupada said, each one of us should be independently thoughtful. So it's our intelligence that needs to be reinforced. And that brings me to the last part, that humility in Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva is where one is completely purified and sees oneself as a part of Krishna. So here it just leads to purity. Purity means a devotee is that there is no self-obsession that in any way obstructs me in absorbing myself in Krishna. And at this level, Krishna is so large that a devotee feels, I am so unworthy. We have at this level songs, Amara Jivana Sada Pape Rata, that my life is filled with sinful activities. Krishna's Karaj Goswami says that I am lower than the worm in the stool. I am more sinful than Jagai and Madai. Now these are extraordinary expressions of humility. At the same time, these expressions of humility do not disempower them. See, what has happened at this particular point is their reference point has changed. For us, mostly, when we talk about humility, our reference point is other people. With other people, am I acting in an arrogant way? Am I acting in an understanding way? Now, we know that ultimately Krishna is the supreme reality and we are meant to connect with Krishna. But Krishna is quite far away for us at this point. But when for a devotee who is in a very exalted state, Krishna becomes the bigger reality, the biggest reality. At that time, a devotee is expressing everything in relationship with Krishna. It's like, say, a person may be very tall. Maybe that person is 6 feet, 7 feet. As compared to other people, that person is very tall. Maybe everybody else is shorter than that person. But if that person is at the peak of a giant mountain, then just the sight of the mountain, that others are shorter than me just becomes insignificant. It becomes irrelevant because this mountain is so large. So at that stage, the reference point is not how I am in comparison with others. The reference point is how I am in my relationship with Krishna. So their mood is that actually, oh Lord, you have given so much mercy to me, but I have not reciprocated adequately with your mercy. And when he says, I am lower than Jagai and Madai, this is not from a moral perspective, it just makes no sense. Jagai and Madai were extremely degraded people. But he's not there talking from a moral perspective. He says that Jagai and Madai never got much opportunity to serve you. As soon as they got an opportunity, they immediately reciprocated by transforming their lives and hearts. He says, I have got so many opportunities and I have squandered so many opportunities. Therefore, I am lower than. Say, I am lower than a worm in stool. That worm in stool doesn't have the consciousness to even appreciate any higher reality. I have the consciousness to appreciate higher reality, but so many times I have neglected turning to you, Lord. So those expressions of humility, if we artificially try to imitate, then that can make humility almost seem like insecurity, a sense of worthlessness. In our journey, I'll conclude this with one last diagram, that it's actually in our relationship with Krishna. Initially, we all have a sense of insignificance, in the sense of, does my life count at all? Do I matter at all? If tomorrow I am not there, will anyone miss me also? So life is so big and complicated that, especially with social media and technology, you are exposed to the entire world now. So everybody starts feeling, does my life count at all? So that is a sense of insignificance. From there, we get a sense of significance. That our spirituality is that our life matters, our actions matter. That Krishna loves us irrespective of who we are. Krishna's love for us is based primarily not on who we are, but on who he is. He's like an all-loving parent. We may be impure, but still Krishna is in our heart and Krishna loves us. So from that sense of, now both of these are, you could say, largely at a material level. Now when I'm saying material significance means, what I'm talking about here is that my life matters. But now gradually from there, our sense of significance, there'll be a spiritual sense of significance. See, material significance means that it depends on I can do something in this world. I can do something of value which is visible and tangible in this world. And that's important to have. Everyone needs that sense of value. Now, it may not be the greatest value, but some value. But gradually it evolves to spiritual significance. That there are many great saintly devotees who became like acharyas, and they are known, their songs are sung. But there are many saintly devotees who never became very famous. But still they are completely absorbed in the Lord because they have that sense of spiritual significance. And then at a higher level, there might be a sense of spiritual insignificance. But this spiritual sense of insignificance is actually because Krishna is so great. What have I done for Krishna? What can I even do for Krishna? So Srila Prabhupada, towards the end of his life, he said that, I am Mahapatit. And then one of his godbrothers and some of his other senior Vaishnavas who were there with him said, Prabhupada, Swamiji, you are not Mahapatit, you are Mahapatit Pavan. Now Prabhupada is not making a show over there. He was feeling that yes, he had done a lot of service for Krishna, but while doing service to Krishna, he had spoken sometimes some critical things to some people. He was saying that I have committed offenses because of that. And in his humility, he was seeking forgiveness. But that humility didn't stop him from acting decisively. Now, that context when Prabhupada says, I am Mahapatit, I have offended others, what he meant was that, in one context we understand that, when Prabhupada came back to India with his Western disciples in the 1970s especially, at that time he naturally introduced his Western disciples to his godbrothers. So naturally want to share our success, our joys with our loved ones. But somehow, some of his godbrothers, not all of them, some of his godbrothers, they started poaching some of his disciples. They started saying that, actually, Swamiji, he was an outsider in Gaudiya Math. He never really spent much time with his guru. What he knows is not so much. Now, we can give you more knowledge. We can tell you so much more about Krishna. Now, when Prabhupada heard this, it was not that he was ego and insecurity, but he felt that, he didn't want his disciples to be confused. They just knew they're coming from a completely different world. And he told his disciples, don't associate with them. He spoke strongly in a sense of being protective for his disciples. He spoke strongly against some of his godbrothers. And for one particular godbrother, he said, he's an envious snake, don't go anywhere near him. Now, that person is a sannyasi, that person is also a guru. Now, Prabhupada spoke very strongly. But then, that particular thing, humility did not lead him to powerlessness, but that also did not lead to ego. When that person departed from the world, some devotees told Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, where did he go? Sometimes devotees get a perverse joy in thinking that somebody who has offended us, that person will go to some hell. Prabhupada was very grave and sober. Prabhupada said, he went back to the spiritual world. He says, my spiritual master is very powerful, and he served my spiritual master faithfully throughout his life. So Prabhupada was protective for his disciples, but that protectiveness did not blind him to the fact that this person was also serving the spiritual master, serving Krishna. So in that sense, Prabhupada is saying, yes, I spoke certain things. So his humility did not stop him from speaking the things that were necessary for protecting his disciples. But at the same time, that humility did not mean that he devalued other service. So it was not insecurity. These are senior god brothers. What they are speaking, how can I challenge that? But it's not ego also. No, they are condemned because they are criticizing. It is so. So he was saying, I am Mahapatit. And Prabhupada said, I am Mahapatit Pavan. So spiritual significance and spiritual insignificance. What that means is, spiritual significance means I have a service to do over there, and I need to protect my service. I need to do whatever is required for. If I have to be assertive, I will be assertive for protecting the service. But then in an appropriate phase, there is this sense of spiritual insignificance. When I was trying to serve, maybe I rubbed some people wrong, and I have offended some people, and I seek forgiveness from them. So the key point is our humility should increase our service to Krishna. Humility should not decrease our service to Krishna. The concluding point I'll make is humility. You want to understand it? Humility means essentially that our ego doesn't come in the way of our purpose. Our ego doesn't come in the way of our purpose, doesn't obstruct our purpose. Let's put it this way. Obstruct or impede our purpose. Now, for a devotee, our purpose is to serve Krishna, and our ego can obstruct our purpose in two ways. One is in the sense of arrogance, where I am so great, I don't need to learn from anyone else. I don't need to take any help from anyone else. The other could be, oh, I am so worthless, I cannot do anything. Both ways, both forms of self-obsession may obstruct us in our healthy development in life, our healthy contribution according to our roles in our service to Krishna. So let me summarize what we discussed today. Our topic was largely understanding humility. And I discussed, firstly, we started by talking about how when we try to understand any virtue, humility or any virtue, it is to be understood not in isolation, that, oh, this kind of action is humble. It is more in integration or relation. It's a relational virtue. It's relation with others and also relation with other virtues within us. It doesn't exist in isolation. Other virtues inside us. And in that context, we discussed how if there is only humility, then that can lead to a slavish mentality that can lead us to blind following. On the other hand, if there is only, on the other side, okay, I want to learn things. So there is curiosity. I want to learn more. Curiosity going too far can lead to cynicism, where we find holes with everything that is being taught. Because we are clever and smart enough, our intelligence can be used to rectify our mind's conceptions or to justify. So we talked about how there is humility and there is curiosity, and then there is also service attitude. So service attitude is that ultimately our existence has a purpose. We are parts of Krishna, we are meant to serve Krishna. And how do we go about serving Krishna? Then I talked about humility in sattva, rajas and tamas. So we talked about in tamas, what happens is humility is seen as not bilateral but trilateral, actually, to understand clearly. On one side is ego, the other side is insecurity. When there is insecurity, the result of that is, this is our vision of ourselves. I can do everything, I can do nothing. In between is humility, I can do some things. So in tamas, it becomes largely insecurity. We talk about the modes as they are like filters for our jnanendriyas, and they are gears for our karmendriyas. They make us see and act in particular ways. So when there is humility becomes insecurity, at that time, when we mistake humility to be insecurity, then at that time, it is we always undercut ourselves. We sabotage ourselves. And that is not healthy. Where in the name of humility, we are neglecting our abilities. So it becomes more of devaluing ourselves. We don't want to devalue ourselves. Then humility in rajas, it becomes a strategy to gain power. Okay, I don't have a strategy to put all of this in one chart down. Okay, let us see if I can do this. So, in strategy means what happens is, I will act humble, I'll put a show of humility for those above me, so that I can demand obedience from those below me. So, show respect to demand respect. And especially, we discussed that two people, one is in tamas and the other is in rajas. That can become a toxic combination. So, insecurity in one person and humility as a strategy in another person. That can be, we discuss examples of toxicity from fanaticism or exploitation in various religious traditions, including our own tradition also. Now, humility in sattva is curiosity. Curiosity means that I want to learn more. I value what I know, but I value even more what I don't know. So that curiosity keeps us open to learning more. So what we know is important, but what I don't know is even more important. And in that sense, this is a very affirmative understanding of humility. It's not just at intellectual, relational level also. That if there is a conflict going on, I may think my points are right, and that may be true, but maybe the other person also has some right point. Let me try to explore. Shuddha Sattva, it is purity. Purity means the ego does not come at all in the way of service to Krishna. So, no ego, it is full focus on service. So, there the reference point has changed completely. So, it's like, it's not so much how I am in terms of others, it is Krishna is so large that I am so tiny in comparison. So, those advanced feelings of humility, we cannot imitate them. But what we can do is, wherever we are in our life, we can try to cultivate humility in a way that enables us to become better instruments in Krishna's service, to play more responsibly whatever roles we are called upon to play. Let's read the last sentence from here. Who would like to read this?
O Supreme Guide, help me find the elusive yet essential balance that will illuminate my way to the life you want for me, a life of truth, purpose, and devotion to you.
Thank you. So let's repeat the starting prayer. We'll conclude. My dear Lord, make me a truth seeker.
Make me a truth seeker,
Not a blind follower
not a blind follower
or a blind rejecter.
or a blind rejecter.
Shri Krishna Bhagwan ki jai. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Really, it was a very nice discussion, especially about humility. All these years, I could not express how my mom, because many times I said to my mom, "You're too, you have too much humility," and really that reflected on that. Now I can explain it, but she's not alive anymore. Where I lost you was on the purity, because the explanation there, you mentioned two things. One, which you had mentioned earlier. You said rightly so, I come from a Christian background, that the Abrahamic religions focus too much on sin. And I had said that many times without, having heard anybody saying that. But that was always my problem. And in fact, I say sometimes to my daughter, I don't go to church, you can go to church, but I have a problem. And I think now I understand the problem. However, though, when you spoke on purity, and that's where I got, lost, you mentioned again back to Abraham kind of reference, because you said, I'm too small and I have too many sins, right? So that took me back to the background that I came, and one more point. Yeah. And also, you said the following about that group, right? That again, he's making a reference not to Krishna, right? You mentioned at some point, you said, I'm worse than them, right? So the reference is not to Krishna. It's again to a group that we said earlier that we should not do that. So that's my
thoughtful questions. Thank you. So generally, relationships involve a complex dynamic of emotions. So, for example, in every relationship, sometimes you may feel, does the other person value me? Does the other person care for me? Does the other person respect me? But one important bond in the relationship is that, does the other person need me? We all have a need to be needed. Now, for some people, the need to be needed is very, very important. So, one reason psychologically why people have children is, apart from the biological male-female attraction, is that nurturing someone else, it fulfills a very deep-rooted need to be needed within us. Now, that can be fulfilled in other ways also. My point is that relationships have many different dynamics and emotions are there. So there are times in the relationship, even in a human-to-human relationship, may feel that this other person is too good for me. Most of the time we feel I am too good for the other person. The other person is not good enough for me. But either way, there are times when relationships have various emotions that we go through. Sometimes, we may recognize that the other person is acting more nobly than what I am. And of course, they may sometimes act in a opposite way also. So even in bhakti, there are different moods that a devotee has. So it is not that is the defining mood. Oh, I am sinful, I am fallen, I am a terrible person. That is not the prominent mood of a devotee. It's not that when, say, for example, we take about these great saints, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, or Rupa Goswami, or Sanatana Goswami. It's not that when they are writing books, they're constantly saying, I am so fallen, I am so fallen, I am so fallen. No, they are actually writing, reflecting on the truths of life, or the truths of divine love, and speaking on those things. So, there are various moods that a devotee also goes through in a transcendental sense. And there are some times when a devotee feels that in that context, sin refers not so much to a moral failing as a devotional failing. And the Lord has shown so much love on me, has showered me with so many opportunities, but I have not reciprocated adequately with the Lord. So in that sense, it is within the dynamic of that relationship. And yes, what you said about, if it's in the dynamic of the relationship with the Lord, then why is the comparison being made with others? Yes, so there is this principle in scriptures that sometimes it is said spiritual truths are completely ineffable. Ineffable means they are beyond any verbal description. Now you can say ultimately they are beyond words, but it is possible through words we can get some understanding of it. So words can be used, they are imperfect describers. So we could say that the descriptions are more indications rather than descriptions. So the idea is that which a devotee is experiencing, that devotee is trying to communicate. But when we are communicating something, some emotion or some experience that is so much outside the ambit of normal human experience, how are we going to convey that? We have to use some human reference point. So when the devotee feels inadequate, at that time the devotee may say that, okay, I feel that I am more fallen, more sinful than Jagai and Madai. So even than sinful people. So, but it is not that is the constant fixation of a person. Some people say, never compare yourself with anyone else. It's just not possible. Because I may not compare myself, but the world is going to compare me. Isn't it? When we are hired for a job, we are compared, who is better for this job. Even in spiritual circle, if I have to do some service, some responsibility, who is better for this? So comparison is a fact of life. But when from a functional requirement, it becomes a psychological obsession. That means it's not that for functional purposes we need to compare. So if a guest comes with a huge suitcase, I think, can I lift the suitcase? Or do I need to call someone else to lift the suitcase? That's a functional comparison we need to do. But when that becomes a psychological obsession, where we can't stop comparing, that's where it becomes a problem. So it's not an obsession for them at all. So in that sense, for each one of us, in the reference to Krishna, whatever emotions are being experienced, if we see the overall life of those characters, that's centered on service. doing tangible things in the service of the Lord, and of course the intangible joy that they experience in their relationship with God and service to God. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Prabhu, thank you very much for this discussion. I was wondering, we go to many classes, Maharaj says, and we'll go to retreats, holy name retreats. The first thing they say is, Trunada Pesunichena, Taroriva Savishnana. If you have that humility, then you can even chant Hare Krishna. So I was feeling, why did not I come to this class first before I go to that class? So in that sense, are we getting into sattva or shuddha sattva? That's far out, honestly. And we are taught, you should be humble, you can chant Hare, cannot chant Hare Krishna. What do I understand that humility means without this class? That's my thought process. Maybe you can enlighten me.
See,
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I would say that we all learn things in an incremental way. So for most of us, the way we live in the material world, quite often it is ego that is the problem. Insecurity can also be a problem, but ego is a problem. Like the whole material world functions on self-promotion, isn't it? One of my friends was in IIM, in India, Indian Institute of Management. He told me that they learned about how to write your CV. It's all about bloating. He says if you see a tap on, it is dripping some water. You go and turn off that tap, you add in your CV, I'm a water conservation activist. So, in the material world, generally speaking, it's all about self-promotion. At a functional level, it may be required also. Not that it's but then that can very easily lead to ego. So, it is a corrective that is given. And the corrective is required, no doubt. Yeah, but if you see implicit in that verse also, the purpose is not just humility. It is Trunadapi Suni Taropi Session, so that Kirtaniya Sadahari. So in that context itself, suppose we are at a place where we are not allowed to do Kirtan at all. That means say we are staying in a country or staying in a locality or staying with some other people who completely don't allow us to do Kirtan. So what would humility mean at that time? If the Kirtaniya Sadahari is not being allowed at all, then humility and tolerance have a purpose. The purpose is we should be able to do Kirtaniya Sadahari. So in those cases, we have to stand up for ourselves. So Srila Prabhupada, when he was in India, he did not get much results in terms of people becoming committed to following him. Now, Prabhupada could have said, maybe I just have to develop more humility. But Prabhupada said, no, if people here are not serious, let me go somewhere else. And he came to America. And he also explored various places. So, yes, humility is definitely important. And many of the agitations that happen in our life, the mental agitations that distract us from our chanting, are because of our ego getting agitated, because of small things becoming very big. So humility and tolerance are definitely important. And when we develop them, that can help us to glorify Krishna constantly. At the same time, it is not that so it's not that these points what I spoke are not there. But in certain sessions, certain things are emphasized more. And certain things may be there, but they may not be emphasized at a particular point. But if you look at the lives of our acharyas, it's not that they, in the name of humility, let their purpose of serving Krishna gets crushed. Yeah, I still want to serve Krishna. And humility doesn't mean that I let that service get impeded. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please. Okay, you can ask your question. Yes, sir.
My question was that you mentioned at the beginning that in Ramayana, Ram does all the actions, most of the deeds himself. But in Mahabharata, Krishna does not do things directly, he does it through Arjuna. Why is there a difference in, why is the thought changed, or why is the approach changed between both the gods? I mean, what might be the reason?
I would say not exactly the approach has changed, because see, Krishna in Vrindavan is definitely the center. Krishna in Vrindavan, so there's Krishna in the Bhagavatam and there's Krishna in the Mahabharata. So it is not that Krishna's approach entirely is different from Lord Ram's approach. Krishna himself fights and kills demons. There's no doubt about that. He does those things. But in the Mahabharata, so every book has a particular purpose. So if you look at the Ramayana, the very name of the book is The Journey of Ram, Ramayana. The Mahabharata is the great story of the Bharata dynasty, of a particular generation in the Bharata dynasty. So when that book is about particular characters, then even God, he is a central person, but he is not central in the action over there. He is central in terms of being the guide, being the guide, counselor, the object of devotion. So the book itself is different. It's not that Krishna alone is Krishna. The book which is focused more on Krishna is the Bhagavatam, especially the 10th canto. And the Mahabharat's focus is different. Any other questions? Yeah.
The things that you spoke about towards the end of the class about feeling spiritually insignificant when compared to Krishna. You said that that comes at the highest stage of our spiritual journey. I was thinking that like as we progress in bhakti, it eventually comes to like a point of bhakti where like we don't feel the feelings of awe and reverence towards Krishna, right? Like the greatness of that, like that aspect of him kind of disappears for us and we feel more possessive towards him. So I was wondering about how you could feel spiritually insignificant when compared to Krishna, when you don't feel like he's great and those kind of things.
I'm appreciating the thoughtfulness of all the questions here. Thank you. Good question. Yeah, so I was not primarily focusing on Vrindavan Leela over here right now. I was focusing more on what Vishwanath Thakur called the Srishti Leela in the material world when we are functioning. It's also the pastime of the Lord going on. In Vrindavan, it is that God conceals his godhood so that personal relationships can come in prominence. And it is not that the Brajavasis don't know Krishna is God. They know, but that knowledge has gone in the background. It's like the sun, the moon and the stars, they are there in the sky in the daytime also. But the sun is so bright that we can't see them. So like that, for the Braja devotees, Brajavasis, the affection for Krishna is so strong that the awareness of Krishna's greatness becomes like the moon or the stars. It goes in the background. Now sometimes they are also aware of it, and they express that awareness when they offer prayers to Krishna. So we are talking right now in terms of our existence in this world. So for all of us, the spiritual insignificance and material insignificance are very different. That was the contrast I was making. That material insignificance just makes us feel completely worthless. Spiritual insignificance is that I am so small and yet Krishna loves me. How great is Krishna? Material insignificance, I am so small that no one cares for me. So it is Krishna is prominent. And then I said that we all have a need to be needed. So as ultimately Krishna does not need anyone for any service. Krishna is omnipotent, Krishna can do everything. But in this world, there are things to be done, and God normally uses human agents to do things. Yes, so we feel a need, we feel that we are needed. If somebody is in charge of cooking and they don't do cooking, no, I have to do this, is my responsibility. And there are, at a functional level, in the organization, at the temple, at various event events, people are needed. And that the feeling that what I am doing has some value, that I can do something of value, is very important. Now, for many people, it is material significance that leads to spiritual significance. What that means is that because we come from the material world, so our frame of reference is often material. So for many people, they may want to, if they're not from a very pious background, they may be more interested in giving charity for, say, free food distribution than charity for free book distribution. So because they feel food, we may say it's not just food, it's prasad. And it is true, it is prasad, of course, but still from their perspective, the hungry people are being fed. So what happens is, for many people, that sense of material significance, that I can do something of value, that I can make a difference, that is also that can be developed by gaining some power and position in this world by which we can make a difference. That can also develop by a connection with Krishna. So now when I say material significances, we evaluate the significance based on the material effects of what we are doing. But we could also evaluate the effects of what we are doing based on spiritual significance. So spiritual significance could be that these two can both go together. Say, if a person was addicted to some bad habits, maybe they were alcoholics, they were drug addicts, and they give that up, and they start practicing bhakti and they chant Hare Krishna and they become ecstatic in chanting Hare Krishna. So now the sense of spiritual significance is, oh, I was an instrument in this person becoming a devotee, this person coming closer to Krishna. The material significance could be that I help somebody become free from addiction. So now both can go together, but it is what do we value at that particular time? That may depend on our consciousness. Valuing spiritual significance is better, but it is not that we can leap to that suddenly. So it will be an incremental process. Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, Prabhu. How do you define full service stage?
Well, full service, what I meant is that simply that we are not caught in, I'm not good enough, I'm this, I'm that. If I'm not able to, if I do this service, others will think I'm proud. If I don't do the service and fail, people will devalue me. No, it's that, okay, let me just focus on the service to Krishna. So now, of course, there we acknowledge if somebody is better than me for this service, we may recommend that person. But if I told you do this service, then we may do that service also. So when I say full, you cannot say there's an objective, measurable definition of full. It is more that our consciousness is immersed in service. So now when our consciousness is immersed in service, I said earlier about humility is not about devaluing ourselves, it is about valuing something bigger than ourselves. So when we focus on that part, what that means is the service is important. And if the service is important, then whoever can do that service better, let's have that person come. So if that, say somebody may be a spiritual master, they are guru, they know spiritual knowledge, but somebody asks a technical question about some Sanskrit or something like that meaning. Now that spiritual master may have a disciple who is very learned in Sanskrit, and you say, you can answer this question. So the spiritual master is not insecure. People think that my disciple is cleverer than me. My disciple knows more than me. No, the service is important. There's a question to be answered. If somebody is more competent to answer that question, then let them answer that question. So in that sense, the full focus is on service to Krishna, and whoever can do that service better, they are called upon to do the service. Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for explaining the humility portion of today's class. My question runs around the tamas area of that. How would we, if a person has self-confidence, where would you put that on the scale of ego, humility, and curiosity, so that it can be moved towards humility?
So I feel that ego will lead to arrogance or overconfidence. Insecurity will lead to diffidence or underconfidence, you can say. And confidence will be associated with humility, that I am something and I can do some things. So that is quite important. Okay.
Thank you.
So that is, thank you Mataji for coming. Hare Krishna. Okay, sure.
Thank you so much. Please come back again whenever you can. We'll be really, really looking forward to this.
Yes. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna, we'll finish. Yeah. So I think confidence will be associated with this only. That it's associated with humility itself. But it is also something which you develop with time. That these are the things which I can do well. So I won't say humility itself is confidence. But humility, as is understood in this context, it helps us to develop confidence. It gives us the foundation. I can do some things. Now let me find out which are the things that I can do. And let me do those things.
At some point in time, it becomes a very thin line between ego and, if you are too much, then it goes to ego otherwise. Is that the correct understanding?
Yeah, so you're saying about the difference between confidence and overconfidence in some ways. Yeah, it is. See, that's why I think if the focus is on the job, the service, the purpose, then it becomes, that can decrease that. So if we are say we are a team lead in the company, or we are in a service we are doing in the temple, then we are the leader in that project. Say let's do it this way. Say we say let's cook for 80 people. But somebody says no. What if 100 people come? Now that's a valid concern. Now we may say I don't think so many people will come. But say if 100 people come up, it's that okay, then maybe I should take in factor. Maybe we have some backup plan, or maybe we cook more and we decide what to do. Sometimes we learn from experience. So we don't have to make it into an ego issue. That that you are right and I am wrong, or I am right and you are wrong. See, the ego loves 4 words. I told you so. Isn't it the favorite words of the ego? So, I told you so. So rather than saying that, okay, yeah, we can all learn from experience. Okay, thank you. Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, I have a couple questions if you allow. You were speaking about absolutizing, the tendency to absolutize some virtues.
Yeah.
And there are some sections in our scriptures where things are defined as it's the horse that pulls the cart, or it's the needle that pulls the thread. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, the characteristics of knowledge in 13th chapter, 8 through 12, Mai Chananya Yogena Bhakti Avyabhicharini. With this quality, all others will come. So I'm wondering, what is the difference between that approach and what is being discouraged, absolutizing a certain virtue?
Okay. So now, that idea that Mai Chananya Yogena, that is the one thing which will lead to all other things. I would say that is the Bhakti tradition's understanding. I'm not sure whether that is the Gita's understanding. Because the book is there, and each tradition reads that book and then draws from that book what is important for that tradition. So, I don't remember reading in the previous Acharya's commentaries the distinctive emphasis that this is what will lead to everything else. Now Krishna, I'm not saying it's wrong, for Krishna does say Bhaktyamam Avijanati, for example. By bhakti you will know me. But then if you look at even what is called as knowledge over there, that knowledge is more in terms of virtues. It is not, Krishna is not saying that it is by my bhakti you will get knowledge of archery. That knowledge of archery is what Arjuna has learned throughout his life. So yes, bhakti is important. But again, if you look at the context, we will see that there is always a contextual emphasis of particular points. So even when some absolute declarations are made, I think the absolute declarations also have to be seen in context. It is that, so that's why texts have to be understood in the light of the tradition. Say, in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is the story of Ajamil, where he chants one name of Narayan and he's delivered. Now, after hearing this, Shukdev Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj doesn't say to Shukdev Goswami, shut up now. There's no need for me to hear from you 7 days. When that bird comes, at that time I'll chant one Narayana. I'll be delivered at that time. Now, he doesn't say that. Why? Because in general, whenever there are any extreme statements, so whenever there are any extreme statements, by extreme I don't mean extremist, but extreme statements are there. So they are not meant to standardize the extreme or normalize the extreme. So there are extremes of positive and extremes of negative are also there. That say Shaubari Muni just saw a couple of fish copulating and he got agitated by that. Now, does that mean that everybody who sees, they will get agitated like that? No. Somebody may have a fish pond and 2 fish, may not even notice it, isn't it? So, the idea is, neither the positive nor the negative, it is not meant to standardize the positive. It is meant to emphasize the standard through an extreme example. That Krishna is so merciful. This is the extent to which the Krishna's mercy can go. So the mood in the Bhagavatam as well as in Prabhupada's purports is that if by chanting one name of Narayana unintentionally, so much benefit can be there. If we regularly chant the name of the Lord attentively, then surely we'll be benefited. Isn't it? So it's meant to emphasize the standard. This is the extent of the mercy of the Lord. So there is a devotional appreciation or devotional glorification, devotional exclamation. So it is true, but it is more there is a qualitative truth rather than a quantitative truth in it. The qualitative truth is that there is so much potency in this. See, one of the things that we often forget is that much of scripture is poetry. It's kavya. And one of the ornaments in poetry is atishoyakti. Mahaprabhu also says this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says that the great poets have glorified Krishna using various ornaments such as atishoyakti. Now, atishoyakti means today the word hyperbole has got a negative connotation. But the idea is that, there are thousands of people at the yatra. Now thousands, what does it mean? Does it mean 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 100,000? Quantitatively there's a huge difference. But we say there are thousands of people over there. But the emphasis is there's a large number of people. The exact quantity is not as important as the quality that is being pointed to over there. Okay? Thank you. You have one more question? Okay, last question. Let's stop with this.
Prabhu, you were there are some ways that we simplify the world. So, like for example, you were saying the wise and the otherwise, right? So there's the demoniac and there's the divine. And I'm wondering if you would share your thoughts on how simplifying the world in these ways, we can avoid judgmentalism, and yeah.
That's again a very good question. See, if you consider a child, we are educating the child. If you want to educate the child about colors, color education will start with black and white, isn't it? If we start telling child, identify the shades of grey right in the beginning, the child will not be able to understand anything. So start with black and white and gradually introduce other colors, and there are shades of grey which come afterwards. So education cannot begin without categories. But we also, education needs to go beyond to understand that the categories are not the absolute reality. The categories are meant to be aids for us to understand reality. Like we may say that there are Americans and there are Indians. We say Westerners and Indians. But what about children who are born over here? They are American Indians. You could say Indian Americans, whatever you want to use the word. That we often say they are like coconuts. They're brown from outside, white from inside. So, the thing is that there are categories and there are problems with categories. But the categories do help us to navigate reality. It's only when we make the categories into absolutes that's the problem. So in the Gita itself, if you see, Krishna gives this description which seems to be like very reductionistic, divine and demoniac natures. But sometimes a speaker is speaking and they speak in such a way that some questions, like sometimes there are some question provoking points, there are some question begging points. If a speaker says, today I'll speak 3 points, the speaker speaks only 2 points. And if nobody asks what is the third point, and the speaker will think, what is the point of my speaking, isn't it? So, as soon as Krishna completes the 16th chapter, immediately Arjuna is asking about what comes in between. So Krishna, and then what is the first verse of the 17th chapter? The first verse is, Krishna talks about 2 categories, those who have Shraddha and those who reject Kama, Krodha, Lobha. Those who follow Shastra and those who have Shraddha. And the other is those who are demoniac. Those who give in to their lust and anger, they reject Shastra also. They have no Shraddha at all. Then Krishna asks about what? Arjuna asks immediately in 17.1, Yaha Shastra vidhimutsrujya vartate shraddhayan tesham nishtha tu ka Krishna satvamaho rajastamaha. That he says that those who have Shraddha, but they don't necessarily accept Shastra, where do they fall over there? So Krishna is talking immediately about the categories between black and white. And then Krishna gives about yajna, dana, tapa, and then anna, the food that we take. Based on that, we can observe and understand who is in which category. So most people are a complex combination. Some of us may have divine qualities, some of us may have demoniac qualities. Most of us have a blend of both. And even the 16th chapter also, it is a bit of a oversimplification to say that there are 2 kinds of people. Because the Daiva Asura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga, there are 2 natures. So there are 2 natures to 2 categories of people. That is a useful simplification, but it can become oversimplification. So Krishna says that when Krishna talks about qualities, these are the qualities that comprise the divine nature. These are the qualities that comprise the demoniac nature. So is Krishna specifically giving a list, these are the people who are demoniac? No, he's saying these are qualities. So that's why even the 16th chapter is not that black and white. But we may make it very black and white. In the early days of our bhakti, we were trained how not to preach. So we used to do skits. So one skit was that we go distributing books. We meet some person on the street and tell them, we give them the Bhagavad Gita. He says, read the 16th chapter. You will find yourself there. And the first 3 verses you will find me. The first 3 verses are the divine nature and the remaining verses are the demoniac nature. So that's so self-righteous that we may have some divine qualities, but we often have some demoniac qualities also. So it's more of a nature rather than an individual. Okay. So thank you very much. Krishna Bhagwan ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.